When you're ready to upload your site to a web server, you need to add the login details to the site definition in Dreamweaver. So go to the Site menu and select Manage Sites. And this lists all the sites that you've defined within Dreamweaver. Select the one that you want to edit, then click the pencil icon at the bottom to edit the currently selected site. Then in the Site Setup dialog box, select Servers from the column on the left, and to add a new server, click the plus button at the bottom left. Server name is purely and simply to recognize it within Dreamweaver. I'm going to call it Remote Server. And then Connect Using is how you connect to the remote server. If you open that menu, you'll see there are quite a few options in there. Let's go through them. FTP, File Transfer Protocol. This is the oldest and simplest way of connecting to a remote server. SFTP stands for Secure FTP, and it uses encryption to establish a connection. But don't confuse SFTP with what's sometimes called FTPS. Dreamweaver lists FTPS by its full name, FTP over SSL TLS, and there are two options using implicit or explicit encryption. SSL TLS stands for Secure Sockets Layer, or the more recent protocol, Transport Layer Security. So the first four options allow you to connect to your remote server over FTP using increasing levels of security. But don't just choose one because you think it's more secure than anything else. You must choose something that is supported by your remote server. So the only people who can tell you what is supported, which method is supported, are your hosting company or the server administrator, so check with them. You're most likely to want to use one of these first four, but the remaining options are local network, which is used normally for setting up a testing server for a server-side language such as PHP or ColdFusion. WebDAV connects using the web-based distributed authoring and versioning protocol, and RDS is used only with ColdFusion servers. These first four are the most commonly used, and the details required by Dreamweaver are pretty much the same for each one. So let's go to FTP, and the FTP address will be something like ftp.example.com. Then you need to fill in the username and password that you've got from your hosting company or server administrator, and then click the Test button to test whether you've managed to connect successfully to your server. If you can't connect, don't forget that usernames and passwords are usually case sensitive, so that could be one of the problems. Alternatively, you might be trying to connect using a method that isn't supported by your remote server. What you enter in the root directory field depends entirely on how your remote server is set up. In some cases, you can leave this completely blank. In other cases, you need to insert a /, but you might need to put in a full path. Again, the only people who can tell you are your hosting company or server administrator. And web URL is the URL that you would use to get to the root directory. If you click in here, Dreamweaver tries to be helpful. It's put in FTP. Obviously, FTP is only for connecting to the server and not for looking at the website, so we need to change that to www. And I sometimes set up sites, test sites within my main domain in a subfolder. So what I will do is I will put the path to the subfolder in root directory, and then I'll add the folder name at the end of the web URL. Down here is more options. If you twirl that open, you see several more options in there. To get the details of what they're all about, click the Help button, and that will launch Dreamweaver's help system, and it gives you details of what each option is for. Most of the time you don't need to bother with them. So I'm going to close that. And there's one extra option if you select FTP over SSL TLS. So let's just open that. By default, Dreamweaver selects Trusted Server. This checks the server's credentials against a list of trusted certificate authorities. If you open that, the alternative is to select None. If you do that, you're shown the server certificate the first time you connect. And if you accept the credentials, the certificate is added to Dreamweaver's Trusted Sites certificate store, so you don't need to accept the credentials each time you connect. There's also an Advanced tab at the top. If you select that, it gives you these options here. By default, Dreamweaver maintains Synchronize information. This enables you to synchronize the files on your local computer with your remote server and vice versa. The information is stored in hidden folders with the name _notes. If you don't like Dreamweaver maintaining those notes folders in your website, then deselect this, but of course you won't be able to use synchronization operations if you do that. This option automatically uploads files to the server when you save a file. I think that's incredibly dangerous, and I recommend that you don't select that. The danger is that you make a mistake on your local file, you save it by accident, and you've then destroyed a page on your live website. And if you select Enable File Checkout, that's if you're working in a team, or maybe if you're working on two separate computers and you want to be able to check in and check out the files. Click the Help button to find out more details about that from the Dreamweaver Help System. So when you've made all your changes, just click Save. That brings you back to this dialog box, and by default Dreamweaver selects the Remote checkbox. You can add more than one remote server to this list here, but only one can be selected at a time. So when you're happy, just click Save. It will then recreate the cache. Click OK, and then click Done to close that dialog box. So that's how you register the login details for your remote site. Go to the Site menu, select Manage Sites, and edit the site setup for the selected site. The most common method of transferring files to a web server is FTP, or one of the secure FTP methods.